I want to tell you about an experiment that I've been involved with, along with many others, and see what you think. I want you to walk through this whole process with us as we have been doing it, and it's far from over, and see if you think it was a good idea or is a good idea. And it all started from a sense of outrage, and I'm going to get to that in just a minute. First, let me tell you a little about our organization, the Rasmussen Foundation. It's 4 generations of people, starting back in 1901, over 100 years ago. And it started with 2 covenant missionaries from Sweden who came to Alaska to try and do good. It started in Yakutat, Alaska, included time in southeast Alaska. But right from the very beginning, even though they were doing the Lord's work, there was always a very strong alignment with culture and art. And Alaska is a place where you can really realize all of that. If you look at a book called Alaska's Quilts and look at the cover of it, you can see a quilt that was made by Jenny Rasmussen when she was in her 20s in Yakutat. It's made out of duck feathers from ducks that she shot herself in Yakutat and made into a quilt. That's probably the first connection with art here in Alaska. The foundation is 55 years old today, but started very modestly with a gift from Jenny Rasmussen of $3,000 of church bonds. And the very first grant that was made in Wasilla was for a movie projector for the teen club. So that's the very humble roots of a $300 grant from the Rasmussen Foundation. But as the foundation grew, from a $9 million foundation to a $500 million foundation right around 2001, the thought was there needed to be a new strategy around arts and culture. Because what we did back in those days was fund very small capital requests. When I was at the Public Radio Network, our first fax machine was a Rasmussen grant, our first computer was a Rasmussen grant, and I know the younger people here are wondering, you can't tell me that you actually ran a radio network with no computers, but we actually did, not that long ago. And the thought was, how many tubas does the Anchorage Symphony really need? We need something else that deals with ensuring there's a vital arts and culture community in the state of Alaska. And that was the idea. So an arts initiative came out of that, and we started looking around at other ideas. And we quickly realized that our local impact had to connect with what was going on around the country as well. If you recall, a number of years ago, support for individual artists virtually disappeared in the United States. And if you look at what's happening today in the United States Congress, we're seeing a repeat of the dynamic that artists are not, and arts are not things that government should care about or support. If you look at this graph, you can see that in the early 90s, when there was the Contract of America, when Newt Gingrich was the Speaker of the House, government support for individual artists virtually disappeared in the United States, and it has remained that way ever since. Some foundations were concerned that this was not good for America, and that having a community where artists were valued was essential. So a study was done by the Urban Institute, and it was funded by a bunch of foundations concerned about this, and they wanted to know, what do Americans think about the arts? So what they did was they asked people, how important are the arts in America? And 96% of the American public said the arts are very important. What percentage of Americans do you think said that artists are also very important? Any idea? 27%. Now, where does all that art come from that people think is so important? What it suggested was that there was a disconnect between people and the arts and culture that they enjoyed and the people who made it. And did it suggest, perhaps, that Americans really undervalued the creative capital that we have in our country? And so this was really the sense of outrage. How could people that I know care so little about artists or value them so little? So a thought was, let's create something new. And that was our great experiment. We created United States Artists. In our grant making at the Rasmussen Foundation, we look at our portfolio much like we do with our investments. We have the real solid income-producing regular stuff that we do, and then we have the high-risk part of the portfolio. United States artists definitely fell in the high-risk part of the portfolio because we rarely make grants outside the United States. It was for something new we were creating rather than investing in a solid organization, which was our comfort zone. And we wanted to see if we could actually change something big, a perception that Americans and Alaskans have about an important issue in our state and in our nation. So we created United States Artists, and the idea was to invest in America's greatest artists and also to raise the profile and the appreciation for artists in American society. So that's what I'll ask you to judge, is whether it was a good idea and whether we can be successful doing that. The idea was, first of all, to create the largest fellowship program, the largest support for American artists, for America's finest artists. And they don't have to be the ones who have been doing it for 50 years. There are artists who are 27 years old who've won, and artists who are 85 years who have won. But where can $50,000 make a huge difference in the life of an artist and also move this agenda and this movement ahead in terms of appreciation for American artists? Something very interesting happened there, and that relates back to our topic about Alaska's creative capital and whether, in fact, creativity is Alaska's most important capital. And does it provide Alaska's global advantage versus other places around the world? And something very interesting has happened. New York and California clearly have the most fellows, and that's because we fund in every discipline, whether it's dance or theater, visual arts, media, and so on. And certain disciplines are focused clearly in the New York area and the LA area. So if you work in theater, if you work in certain media, if you work in certain visual arts and so on, in most cases, people, wherever they're from, find themselves on the two coasts. But interestingly, after New York and California, Massachusetts has the third number of fellows, and Alaska has the fourth number of fellows who have been selected. And if you think about our population being so small compared to other states, that's quite amazing. And what it suggests is there's something about Alaska creativity that is competitive on the world stage. The process is very fair. You have to be nominated. There are 2 nominators from all 50 states, so every state has an equal opportunity to have fellows, and yet Alaska has emerged as one of the most important elements of selecting fellows. Here are some of them with the Rasmussen family, and the family actually has a long history not only of making art and buying art and presenting art, but also being patrons of the art. Elmer Rasmussen, in fact, was a patron of the great Alaskan artist Fred Makatons back in the 50s when he was at a tough point in his life. And many village artists used to come into the National Bank of Alaska down at Northern Lights and C Street when they were coming in for healthcare or education or shopping and bring art with them and sell it to the National Bank of Alaska. And Elmer Rasmussen bought just about everything that people brought by, and you can see it in the museum in the main floor of a bank, which is an odd thing to see in the first place. You might think it's the traditional artists of Alaska that would really be viewed as unique, but in fact, it's really the broad range. This is John Luther Adams. He was one of the first fellows, and he does contemporary music out of Fairbanks, Alaska. The New Yorker has called him one of America's greatest living composers. And here is Alvin Anagayu, who is an ivory carver from Gamble, Alaska. So the range is complete. I'd like you to see the others. Perry Eaton, who's originally from Old Harbor in Kodiak and lives here in Anchorage and is a mask maker. Also Anna Brown Ellers, who is a weaver who comes from Juneau. John Haynes, who just passed away within the last month, who is a poet working in Fairbanks and who many think is one of the most unappreciated literary artists in America. Tommy Joseph, who makes fabulous carved Tlingit totems and other sculptures down in Sitka, Alaska. Andrew McLean, whose films you've probably heard about, who was just selected for the Sundance Festival and won 2 major awards in Berlin, and Terry Rothkar, who's a weaver from Sitka, Alaska. So the range is really incredible, and it suggests that there's something about what Alaskans do that attracts attention around the world. The idea for United States Artists is to make this permanent, to raise $50 million from private individuals and foundations to endow this largest program for American artists forever. And I would say we're about 25% of the way there. And the thought is, what else could we do to advance the mission of making artists appreciated in American society and allow individuals to connect more with American society? Here in Alaska, we had a specific problem. In talking to artists here in Alaska, what they said is one of the biggest obstacles we have is we're isolated from our peers around the country. And if there's something you could do to connect us better, to put us more into the mainstream, to expose our work around the country, that would be a great gift you could do. So along came Alaska Air Program, and the idea was to, another experiment, ask the 50 fellows who were selected, would you have an interest in going to Alaska for a month and spending time with Alaskan Artists, Alaska organizations? It's been going for about 4 years now. We usually have 5 times as many artists apply as we can accommodate. But they've done fellowships at the Alaska Dance Theater, at Out North, at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, down in Homer, in Sitka, at the Island Writers Institute with Perseverance Theater. Some of the artists, like Kathy Opie, one of the most celebrated photographers in America, did scene creation for Perseverance. So several have worked in different media. A Mexican-American artist from San Diego, Tania Aguilera, worked in Fairbanks, and we have photos of her stripping birch off of trees and working with a new material she's never worked with before. A jewelry artist from New York who was using new material she had never seen before to enhance her work. And going forward, this is an idea we're deciding, is it worthy of continuing in the work that we do? We are also seeing what can we do to enhance the connection between individuals and the arts. And as a foundation, it's difficult for us and others to directly fund artists except through specific programs that we can do. We also want to allow individuals who like art, like artists, want to connect but don't have a way to do it. So along came United States Artists Projects, and this is our latest experiment. The idea was, could we create, looking at some of the other sites that have been created on the web, a way for individuals and artists to connect? So we thought, let's start with our USA artists, let's reach out to our other artist programs and create a dialogue between them where they can have the opportunity to bring support for the projects that they love and also to engage Americans in the work that they do. Here's the site, the USA Project site. And there are a couple that we started off with. One of the first was John Luther Adams, I mentioned before. He had a new CD he wanted to do, and it was going to cost about $5,000. And the thought was, let's see if we post it and send the word out. If individual people are willing to give $10, $15, $20, and could you get enough people excited about this work to make it happen? And within about 30 days, enough people had donated that John Luther Adams did his new CD. And here the Alaska Community Foundation and the Fairbanks Foundation actually did a match. So they far exceeded the goal with about 37 different people connecting to do it. Then when Andrew McLean was going to Barrow, he wanted to be able to bring all of the actors from Barrow and the North Slope to experience Sundance and see the premiere of their movie. So he posted a project saying, would you help me bring the actors from Barrow and Kotzebue around the North Slope to Sundance? He set out a $10,000 goal. As you can see, he succeeded with $14,000. 23 different people checked in, said, I'll help you do this. So it's really a new kind of democratic philanthropy where people can really follow their passions, but also allow people to connect in a more real way with artists and what they do. To date, over 100 artists have participated. Over 100,000 visitors have participated, and this is just in about 6 weeks. Over $1 million has been donated for individual artists, and over 4,000 people have participated. My friend Sammy Hoy, who runs the Otis College of Art down in Los Angeles, and I urge you to go there if you have a couple extra hours around the LA airport, said this, and he's one of our fellow board members: the trail of human capital development can be traced from agriculture to industrial, to information, to knowledge, to idea-based. The evolutionary vector is pointing towards creativity, the new competitive advantage of our time. Creativity promises to be the most sustaining, distinguishing factor in global competition for our country. And this is the perfect moment for the U.S. to champion artists. Creativity equals opportunity. So is creativity Alaska's global advantage? When we talk about Alaska's advantage in the economy, we talk about our location, that we're an air crossroads. We talk about our natural resources, our oil. We talk about our fish and our minerals. But I don't think we've ever talked very much about our creative capital. And if you think about it, look at telecommunications. We've been the pioneers in the world in using distance delivery, in being creative about technology and how we can use it to connect. And today, Alaska is one of the most connected places. From the smallest villages and all around the world, people look at our technology and our ability to connect as a model. Look at our healthcare. We clearly have, in the Native health system, the most extraordinary primary care system in the world. Countries like Afghanistan, developing countries in Africa, developing countries in South America come to Anchorage, Alaska to look at the primary health care. We have the most outstanding Native education program with our ANSEP. We have colleges all over the United States who have tried and failed in helping at-risk students succeed in math and science and technical careers coming to Anchorage and Alaska to see what we're doing. Is it about health? Is it about education? Is it about technology? I don't think so. I think it's really about creativity. And when you look again back, 9 Alaskan artists among all of those across the United States being selected, what was it about them that got the attention of people around the United States who specialize in different fields? I think it was their creativity. So is Alaska's creative capital its true global advantage? That's the question I would pose to you. Thank you.